Hello, welcome to the Energy Question with David Blackmon. I'm your host, David Blackmon, and my special guest today is Armando Cavanha, my fellow panelist on the Energy Transition podcast, along with Irina Slav and Tammy Nemeth that we record every Monday. It's my favorite hour every week, a great way to start the week and get my brain functioning on Monday mornings. Armando, how are things in Brazil today?
Brazil is trying to be better, but it's a complicated country nowadays. It's not too different from the United States, I suppose.
Where energy is concerned, that's for sure.
Yeah,
unfortunately, it's not necessarily a good thing.
Yeah.
Before we go into our interview, I wanted to just give you a chance to talk about your background. I know you have a long background in the industry and academia, and tell our viewers about who you are and what you do.
Okay, thank you, David. I'm a mechanical engineer and with master degree in production engineering. I worked 33 years for the same company, one company only, Petrobras, the state oil company in Brazil, with many positions, director of Petrobras Netherlands, and in the United States in Petrobras, being procurement manager for the first installation of Petrobras in Gulf of Mexico. And after retired, I went to another company in the United States, Thompson Knight Energy Services.
Yeah,
yes.
Yeah.
I was CEO of this company for a time. And there is a chamber of commerce between Brazil and the United States. They call Texas Chamber of Commerce. I was director of 2 terms of this institution. Was a great time. Nowadays, I'm a professor, academic advisor in the Catholic University in Rio de Janeiro, and I joined the company called Rystad Energy recently.
I didn't know that. That's wonderful.
Yeah, company for Norway.
Great company, yes.
The CEO is a fantastic company. They organize a data about energy. I'm loving this situation.
Yeah, so, I use their information quite a bit in my writing. Yeah.
Oh yeah, really? Yeah, it's growing very fast, and they came to Brazil for some visits, and I followed them. So fantastic. I really love them.
Yeah, I moderated a panel discussion in Houston a couple of months ago with Ed Talkman, one of their executive vice presidents at Rystad, was on the panel. He's incredibly knowledgeable.
Yeah, very, very knowledgeable people. Interesting. But that's it. It's my career, and nowadays what I'm doing.
That's the most important.
But the most important thing is Mondays, 10 a.m. Brazilian time. The podcast with David Blackmon, Irina Slav, and Tammy Nemeth. It's a great pleasure for me. It's funny.
Well, we cover a lot of ground in that podcast. It's quite amazing. You know, I try to focus in one area on this podcast, but on that one, man, we go all over the place every week.
That's right.
Well, you told me that I was at OTC last week. You said you've been at OTC several times in the past. Did you enjoy being in Houston? I probably has a lot of similarities to Rio, right?
Yes, we have OTC in Rio too. So but yes, more than 10 times, I suppose 15 times, because where I was living in the United States, I used to be there. And from Brazil, normally we go to Houston every May, beginning of May of each year, to participate on this fantastic event, because but it's a service provider let's see, exposition, more than service providers than oil companies, but very, very, very attractive, and the technical sections are deep understanding, deep discussions. So it's really a fantastic seismic logging, well drilling, subsea, topside, everything about upstream, basically the upstream they have there.
There were a lot of sessions focused on South America at this OTC last week, on Brazil, what's going on in Argentina, and of course Guyana and Suriname. But we're going to talk about Brazil today because there's so much potential offshore Brazil and onshore. You have a new president, President Da Silva, who replaced Jair Bolsonaro after the last election, in a very hotly contested election, kind of like we had in the United States in 2020. How do Da Silva's, he's I guess, a socialist. How do his energy policies, how are they stacking up compared to Bolsonaro's?
Yeah, they have two different mindsets, opposite mindsets. Bolsonaro is more to the private sector. He loves privatization. So it's something Petrobras, if he won, Petrobras probably would be the next one to be privatized. Lula is exactly the opposite. So he likes state companies. He understands that the state must finance and invest directly. So it's totally different. So, David, only to see a detail, Petrobras sold last 2 or 3 years before, the company, the arm of the company, the distribution of the products, after refinery, the distribution of products, we sold this company. And Lula is talking about to buy again this company. So this is something that we cannot believe that may be done, but he's talking about this, and people are scared, of course, scared.
Yeah.
There's another detail that Lula probably will intensify in these next days or next month, is the local content, the protection of the local market, the construction, modules, FPSOs. Subsea, we are very strong in Brazil. And why we are strong in Brazil? Because it was the first country that installed anticipated systems with flexible lines. So this is something that Brazil started decades ago. So subsea is not a problem to have local content, but topside, for instance, is more complicated. It has turbines, compressors, and this is something that we are facing a challenge for Brazil to have the projects in a good timeline and at the same time forcing local content. We do not know.
So on local content, I mean, it won't just, it's not just talking about the number of jobs that local citizens have. It's also focused on the manufacturing of the equipment there in the country rather than importing it from overseas. Exactly. Yeah, and so that'll take quite a lot of time to develop that capacity, won't it? Or is the capacity already there?
Exactly, but and they established the following: 25% minimum local content for exploration, 40% for subsea, and 40% for topside. So this is something that puts the market crazy, totally. And the oil companies forcing to delay some projects, postpone some projects because we do not have exactly the right equipment, the right systems to be installed. So yes, that's the challenge.
Yeah, and that'll put pressure on the education system, the higher education system.
Takes time, as you said.
Yeah. And we see that all over the world, you know, I mean, that happens everywhere. But as you say, it has the impact of slowing these projects down. And that's one of the reasons why, despite having this massive potential resource there in Brazil, the development of it has not proceeded, you know, efficiently over the years, like we see in Guyana with the consortium on the Stabroek block. You know, having one consortium developing that entire resource in cooperation with the government has really created a very efficient and quick process, just churning out discovery after discovery, where it becomes so more complex and difficult with all the government oversight in Brazil.
And the most complicated part of this game is that they apply fines and penalties for those that do not reach the minimal level. So it's incredible.
Well, I guess it'll all get developed sooner or later. I know Wood Mackenzie and Rystad too, I think project very positive prospects for more development in Brazil, right? The resource, no one questions the resource availability, right?
Right. Not only in the conventional pre-salt, let's see, in the south part of the country, in front of Espírito Santo state and Rio de Janeiro and São Paulo, but now trying to copy and paste from Guyana exploration. So the successful exploration in Guyana, and they call a new pre-salt because the kind of formation is very similar to the south pre-salt carbonates and so. So the idea is to explore exactly south of Guyana exploration blocks, and we have intention to do that. More than 5 years ago, we are trying to apply the environmental license, and the government do not allow this exploration drilling. They have some. So that's the point. It's a very good potential, because Brazil has around 12 billion barrels in situ of oil.
Yeah.
So it's a huge reserves, not big as Venezuela or Saudi Arabia or United States,
Right.
but it's good. It's enough. So we can produce 3 million barrels a day. It's much more than we need to the internal consumption. So it's a good position.
And what
Yes.
what is the average export volume of Brazil? I know you're a net exporter of crude oil. How much?
1 million barrels a day.
A million barrels a day. So that would rank Brazil in the top 12 or so countries globally in terms of exports.
You know which country we are exporting to?
Probably China mainly.
Yeah, right. Yes, because United States didn't accept this oil from Brazil. I don't know why. Because it's so clear, so let's see, the logistics is not vertical, and so simple, the logistics to United States. And we import diesel and gasoline from the United States. Could be kind of trading, but
I don't understand that. I mean, it's not due to any kind of sanctions, is it? I mean, I don't think the United States has any economic sanctions on Brazil, do we?
Yeah, there is no clear sanction, but the friendship is not so good as in the past. So forcing us to be part of our groups and China and BRICS and so on.
Well, BRICS is of course, and I was going to bring that up later, but let's talk about it now. You know, Brazil is the B in BRICS, along with Russia, India, China, and South Africa. A very robust, growing, and increasingly influential trading alliance that is about to start adding members, apparently. And, so that is a big part of what drives Brazil's economy now, isn't it? The relationships with those other 4 countries and all the trade relationships you have with them.
Yes, very good point, David. The successful relationship with Europe and with the United States, these two situations are forcing Brazil to move to. But BRICS has more than 2014, I suppose. So almost 10 years, and now they are trying to put more, velocity, speed in this process of BRICS. But it's something interesting, because as we export 1 million barrels a day to China, and we sell some commodities to everywhere in the world. So Brazil is attractive in terms of being part of new groups that Brazil can make much more money than only being in South America and so.
Sure, absolutely,
but the point is, the connection with the US was very strong in decades ago, very, very strong. And now this new world that we are living here, and of course the United States too, with the new president, and we cannot predict what can happen with Brazil in terms of
neither can
alliance.
we. We can't predict anything coming out of this administration either. So other than we can predict, none of it will make any sense. But not much else. I don't know if you saw it. We follow one another on Twitter. And I don't know if you saw it yesterday, but I came across a fascinating chart of the fastest growing economies on Earth in recent years. And when you look at the top five, it was China, India, Brazil, and Russia were the top four. Number five was Saudi Arabia, which has applied for membership to BRICS. And if BRICS admits Saudi Arabia, that would have amazing ramifications for United States continuing influence in the Middle East.
Exactly.
And then South Africa was number 9 on the list. So when you look at the fastest growing economies, BRICS countries already have a bigger combined GDP than the G7 does.
Yeah.
And those are the fastest growing economies on earth. It's just extraordinary how powerful that alliance is becoming. And it makes complete sense that, Brazil's relationship, particularly with China, I think, right, more than any of the other companies, has grown so much in recent years.
There are 19 countries applying to be part of BRICS.
Yeah.
BRICS Plus, we could call BRICS Plus, like OPEC Plus. But the afraid we have in Brazil is that like NATO is an economic and military connection, BRICS is starting as an economic group, but is not forbidden to transform in a military group.
Sure.
So this is a very bad point in this sense.
Yeah, and it's amazing to me how little attention is being paid to that in our news media in the United States, and frankly by our government, which doesn't really even seem to notice. And I just think it's so preoccupied with what's happening in Ukraine that it doesn't. Our people at our State Department don't seem to be making the connections between, what's happening with our sanctions on Russia related to the war in Ukraine and how that's causing Russia to build these stronger relations with China and India. And by extension, that is also helping, to expand influence by that alliance with Brazil and other countries in South America. We see it growing almost day by day with China's entry in Bolivia to take control of the development of the lithium reserves in Bolivia now. And where copper's concerned in Peru, Chile, China is also making great inroads there into South America. And it just all seems to be happening without much notice from the American government, which seems kind of troubling to me from America's perspective, but it's good for Brazil, I think.
Yeah, it's a good time, but short time, I suppose, because these interests are much bigger than our capacity to manage this thing. So these new countries entering in BRICS, the situation will be something different because there is no leadership in this. China is a leader. But we do not have totally, let's say, connection with China. The mindset, the culture is totally different. It's different from Western countries that we have a very good relationships. So we need to start to create this new relationship. I do not believe that is something strong to the future.
But back to the oil resource and Petrobras. It's not just entirely Petrobras developing the offshore, right? Just Monday of this week, we had Equinor announcing this big $9 billion deal with a partnership with Repsol and Petrobras to develop an offshore natural gas asset there. Talk about what's happening there.
Yeah. But this is something that happened in the past and was very good to Brazil. We opened the market to international companies, big oil, and they apply with Petrobras in some consortium for exploration and isolated for others, and being operated in different ones. Is the case of this south part of Campos Basin that Equinor applied as operator. We have Repsol and Petrobras, I suppose. But and the initiative of Equinor to be, let's see, the leader of this process and to start a production of natural gas is something very welcome to Brazil. Of course, why? Because Brazil has 3 billion cubic meters of reserves of gas, natural gas. It's not too much, but it's enough to produce 150 million cubic meters per day. Is not enough for Brazil, for the industry. So you have some issues in terms of energy for industry, in Brazil. So if we can add this 14 million cubic meters per day from Equinor and the partners, is related to 10% of the total production nowadays. It's good. It's a very good position. The tricky point is how they can move this gas from the platforms, from the FPSO to onshore. So it's far from the pipelines, existing pipelines. So needs to construct some pipelines to connect to the main pipelines, or to transform in LNG. But it's complicated, it's expensive, and takes time. So the probable situation is to make some connections and start producing natural gas. It will take time. It's not for today or tomorrow.
Yeah,
Maybe
7 years, 8 years, something like that, probably timeline.
But the Equinor is a very traditional partner in Brazil. And I don't know if you know about that, but the most important asset of Equinor outside Norway is in Brazil. So
I didn't know that, no.
Yeah. It's the most important country for Equinor. So the relationship with Norway is very strong and coming very, very strong every day.
And the Silva government is okay with this relationship, this private investment in the oil sector?
Yeah, good point. Very good point. Yes, because in the 2 mandates that he had in the past, he accepted very well Equinor and other companies applying to. Some critics and some points, but I suppose that the business is much bigger than this incoherence of some governments that they have. So yes, they accept well, and it's too many. Is a huge investment. Petrobras is part of the process, the partnership. Right. So there is no way to stop this.
Okay,
project.
Well, that's a positive thing. And I think Petrobras has 30% of that project as a non-operator, and Repsol has 30%, and the rest is with Equinor.
Exactly.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I didn't realize there was that strong a relationship with Equinor in Brazil. That's interesting to me.
And the good point that Equinor being an operator, the difficulties that they can have is good to let's say to support Petrobras claims.
Yeah.
In terms of local content and everything. So it's good to have different operators here in Brazil. We have Shell being operator in some fields, and Exxon too. So it's good. Chevron.
Yeah, it was actually one of the best. I was at Shell for a couple of years back in 2006, 2007 timeframe. And that was one of the best aspects of being there, was getting to meet all the folks in our operations in Brazil and Venezuela and other parts of South America. Unfortunately, shortly after that, Venezuela, shut Shell down and other companies down in terms of private investment there. But had wonderful interactions with folks from Brazil there. It's really a very cool part of that job. On LNG, You talked about how Brazil's natural gas production doesn't really fill the domestic requirements. Is there any prospect to increase natural gas production to an extent where you would no longer have to import LNG from overseas?
Good point, because part of our natural gas we re-inject in the reservoirs to increase the oil production. Of course, profitable things. But if we and we are constructing the route number 3 from some platforms in pre-salt to the onshore. So if we can have this pipeline ready soon, we can export more from platforms to onshore, more natural gas to our industry. But at the same time, I do not believe that Brazil be let's say an exporter of LNG. I do not believe, because our reserves are not too big, our production is not too big, and to be part of this game of LNG exportation is something very complicated. So
yes, it is.
The investments are huge. The logistics is something that must be attended. So I do not believe. But of course, if we could at least bring this gas from platforms in our coast to onshore, is something that's enough. For my understanding, it's enough, not necessary to be exported.
Well, one other thing, doesn't have anything to do with oil and gas, but Brazil also has pretty significant lithium reserves. Correct? Isn't there? I don't know what part of the country it's in. It's not part of the lithium triangle, obviously, but I know that there's been some talk about Brazil joining with the 3 countries that have the lithium triangle to form kind of a cartel on lithium exports. Is it really a significant resource for the country?
I'm not sure about the volume of lithium reserves in Brazil. I know that other countries like Chile and Argentina,
and
Bolivia, they have,
I think.
Peru. But Brazil is not one of the most important lithium reserves. I'm not sure about that. What Brazil has is still processes. So we export steel.
Oh,
and,
So you have, does Brazil have a substantial mining sector for iron ore and as the feedstock for that?
Very strong. One of the most important ones in the world, and we export to China and to everywhere. So this I know that's something strong in Brazil.
Yeah.
But lithium and other rare earths and so we do not have.
Okay. Well, I misunderstood that part of that story then. We are running up against time. These half hours go too fast, as you well know. I also, before we go though, you also do other podcasting, correct? You do other podcasts in addition to the energy transition podcast that we work on together, right?
Right, and with some topics related to the de-dollarization or not, the influence of dollar. We have some friends that are from banks, and we talk about that, and sometimes about diversity. So as I worked with some ladies in the past, and they always are claiming about this relationship in the work space, and so it's very interesting.
Well, we have a lot of diversity on our own podcast with Arena and Tammy, and gosh, I'm just amazed at the level of information and knowledge they bring to the table every week.
Impressive.
It really is. It's pretty extraordinary. Every time I talk to either one of them, I'm just amazed at all the things I didn't know before I talked with them about something. So anyway, listen, thank you so much for doing this. We're going to make a habit of it, maybe do it every 3 months or so. just cycle back together, and really appreciate your time, and hope you have a great week.
David, it's a great pleasure for me. And do not forget that you gave the name Energy Transition to our podcast. It was your idea, yes. And we are not against the energy transition. We are in favor of that. But
right. We just want it to make sense. Yeah.
Yes. What we need, and we are trying to explain to everyone, is that must be rational, must be something feasible with no charters. So that's the good point. And this is the way I love our podcast. And I admire you a lot.
Well, thank you. And I admire you too. I appreciate it. It was just so folks know, I mean, Armando reached out to me on LinkedIn one day about 3 years ago. And that was how we became acquainted. And all of this grew out of that. And that initial connection. So I always give you credit for starting the process on all of that.
Thank you so much, David.
Well, thank you, and have a wonderful week. And thanks to Eric Perel, our extraordinary producer, to Stu Turley and the Sandstone Group for hosting our podcast, which can be found on Spotify, on Apple Podcasts, Spreaker, all those platforms. Just go out there and search for us. You'll find all our past episodes. And really appreciate y'all for tuning in. And for now, this is David Blackmon signing off.